Imagine your heart stops. The room around you disappears. The voices of doctors fade away. And yet, somehow, you are still aware. You can see. You can think. You can remember. Then something happens that you never expected. And when doctors finally bring you back, you describe an experience that feels more real than a dream. Stories like these have been reported by people around the world. Different countries. Different religions. Different ages. Different circumstances. And yet, some of their accounts contain strangely similar details. Scientists call them near-death experiences, or NDEs. But what exactly causes them remains debated. Are they extraordinary experiences created by a brain under extreme stress? Or could they tell us something about what happens when we die? Here are 7 things people who came close to death have repeatedly reported experiencing. And number 7 may be the strangest of all. 1. The feeling of leaving the body. One of the most famous features of a near-death experience is also one of the hardest to explain emotionally. People sometimes describe suddenly finding themselves outside their physical body. They may feel as though they are floating near the ceiling. Below them, they see their own body. Doctors may be working around it. Family members may be nearby. But instead of feeling frightened, some describe themselves as strangely detached from what is happening. They know the body below belongs to them, but they don't feel as though they are inside it anymore. These experiences are known as out-of-body experiences. Scientists have investigated similar sensations and found that disruptions in how the brain combines vision, touch and spatial awareness can sometimes create the feeling of being located outside the body. But for the person experiencing it, the sensation can feel completely real. And that's only the beginning. 2. An overwhelming sense of peace. You might imagine that approaching death would produce overwhelming terror. Yet many near-death accounts describe almost the opposite. A profound calm. Pain seems to disappear. Fear disappears. Some people describe feeling surrounded by warmth or love. Others say they felt more peaceful than at any other point in their lives. This feeling can be so powerful that some people later say they didn't want to return. There are possible biological explanations. The brain and body undergo dramatic chemical changes during extreme trauma, and these could influence perception and emotion. But whatever the cause, the recurring description is remarkable. At a moment when the body may be fighting desperately to survive, the person's subjective experience can sometimes feel peaceful. 3. Moving through darkness toward a light. This is probably the image most associated with near-death experiences. A tunnel. Darkness. And somewhere ahead, a brilliant light. Not everyone describes an actual tunnel. Some describe moving through a dark space. Others describe being pulled towards something bright. And some simply describe a light appearing around them. Interestingly, there are neurological theories for why this might happen. Changes in blood flow and oxygen reaching the visual system could potentially create narrowing vision or bright visual phenomena. But people who experience it often describe the light as much more than something they merely saw. They describe it as having a presence. Something comforting. Something familiar. And sometimes, they believe someone is waiting inside it. 4. Seeing people. WHO have already died. This is where many accounts become deeply personal. Some people report encountering relatives or friends who died years earlier. A parent. A grandparent. A sibling. Sometimes even someone they hadn't thought about for a very long time. The encounter may involve conversation. But in other accounts, no words are spoken at all. The person simply feels that they understand what is being communicated. Skeptics point out that memory, expectation and culture could influence these experiences. A person's mind may create familiar faces during an extraordinary neurological event. But for those who experience it, these encounters can feel intensely meaningful. And sometimes the message is surprisingly simple: you can't stay here yet. 5. Watching their life flash before them. You've probably heard the expression, "My life flashed before my eyes." For some people, that's surprisingly close to what they say happened. During what researchers sometimes call a life review, people report experiencing memories from throughout their lives. Childhood, relationships, mistakes, moments of kindness, things they had almost completely forgotten. But some accounts describe something even stranger. Instead of simply remembering what happened, people say they experienced their actions from another person's perspective. They felt the happiness they had caused someone, or the pain, almost as though they were being shown the consequences of their entire life. Whether this represents unusual memory activity in the brain or something more mysterious remains uncertain. But for many people, the experience reportedly changes how they live afterward. 6. Reaching a boundary they cannot cross. Across some near-death accounts appears another unusual detail. A boundary. It isn't always the same. One person may describe a door, another, a river, a wall, a gate, a line, or simply the overwhelming feeling that there is a point beyond which they cannot continue. They somehow understand that crossing it would mean they couldn't return. Sometimes a deceased relative tells them to go back. Sometimes a presence communicates that their time hasn't come. And sometimes they simply make the decision themselves. Then, everything changes. They wake up, back in their body, back in the hospital, back in pain, back among the living. But there is still one experience that may be even stranger. 7. Coming back, different. Perhaps the most fascinating part of near-death experiences isn't what happens during them. It's what happens afterward. Some survivors describe dramatic changes in their personality and priorities. They may become less afraid of death. Relationships become more important. Money or status may seem less significant. Some feel more compassionate toward other people. Others develop a stronger sense that their life has a purpose. Not everyone has a positive aftermath. Some struggle to understand what happened to them. Others find it difficult to explain the experience to friends and family. But many remain absolutely convinced of one thing: whatever they experienced, it wasn't just a dream. So, what really happens? Near-death experiences present us with a fascinating mystery. There are scientific hypotheses involving oxygen deprivation, brain chemistry, altered perception, memory and neurological activity. And importantly, an NDE is not scientific proof that consciousness survives death. But that doesn't make these experiences meaningless. For the people who have them, they can be among the most vivid and transformative experiences of their lives. And researchers continue studying what happens to consciousness when the human body approaches death. Perhaps one day we'll understand exactly why people report these experiences. Or perhaps the boundary between life and death will always contain mysteries we can't completely explain. Until then, one question remains. When the brain approaches its final moments, are we witnessing the last extraordinary experience created by the human mind? Or are we catching the faintest glimpse of something beyond it? Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a near-death experience? Or has someone you know ever described seeing a light, leaving their body, meeting someone who had died, or experiencing something they simply couldn't explain? Tell us what happened in the comments. Because sometimes the strangest stories aren't buried in ancient archives. They're carried by the people living among us. And if you enjoy exploring forgotten history, unexplained experiences and mysteries that still don't have easy answers, subscribe to the Hidden Archive. There are many more stories waiting to be uncovered.